Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to go back to talking about Diddy, the NDA, and all of that stuff. Mainly because the NDA has been leaked, released, whatever you want to call it. And so now that's out there. So I figured we could go through it. Now obviously I'm not a legal expert. I'm just reading this as the average person reads a document. So I'm not claiming any expertise. I'm just saying let's look through it and see what's going on, especially because so much of what's been going around with Diddy has been questionable, to say the very least. I want to look over what is in that NDA. Anyway, before we get to that, Diddy NDA revealed, you can't talk shit about anyone in my world. There's something about headlines with 3 exclamation points that really makes you take them seriously. Diddy's methods of keeping his business affairs have been shrouded in mystery, but now TMZ can show how, because we obtained a standard Combs NDA studio attendees were required to sign. The document, a pretty standard non-disclosure agreement, prevents signees from sharing information related to Diddy, his family members, current or former partners, spouses, friends of business associates. So this is the average Diddy NDA, which doesn't mean that necessarily this is the same type of NDA that people who were going to his freak-off parties were getting. I would surmise that those NDAs are a lot longer, honestly. I think they're going to cover a lot more bases than the NDA that I'm going to show you now, because this one is pretty average based on the NDAs that I've seen. The NDA tells signees not to photograph, film, or record, or have another person film or record Diddy or anyone in his orbit without his written consent, and specifically named social media sites where attendees can't post photos Diddy doesn't sign off on. Signers are not to give interviews, write books, or otherwise disseminate information about Diddy without prior written consent. So now I'll get to the NDA, but the last thing they say is, quite frankly, it's a pretty boilerplate NDA and you can read it all for yourself, but the basic gist is that anyone signing the document needs Diddy's written consent to share any info. There's one fact about the NDA, which in my opinion makes it, I don't want to say more shady, because NDAs aren't necessarily shady. Certainly in this case, there's a lot to be wondered about these NDAs, but this I thought was telling. Worth noting, the NDA lasts for the life of the artist plus 20 years after their death, or a grand total of 70 years, whichever is longer. The length of NDAs varies from agreement to agreement, but this is certainly on the longer side. So let's look at the NDA. The parts that are highlighted were highlighted by me. So I just highlighted parts of the agreement that I thought were important and that are telling. You hereby irrevocably agree that A, you shall not at any time disclose directly or indirectly to anyone any of the following information, any information acquired by you in any manner and or by any medium or means whatsoever at any time, the past, present, or future which concerns or in any way relates to artist, any artist parties, and artist business activities, entertainment activities, financial affairs, and or personal life, and all such information shall be deemed confidential, private, secret, and sensitive, and kept by you as confidential unless artist otherwise advises you in writing, in artist's sole discretion. B, any and all information described in paragraph 1A, including without limitation, pictures, recordings, records, documents, property, merchandise, or any other information related to artist and or personal or professional and or other activities of artist or artist party, whether prepared by or behalf of you or otherwise coming into your possession, is and shall remain artist's sole and exclusive property and shall not be disclosed, removed, sold, disseminated, copied, or otherwise used and or exploited by or on behalf of you without artist's prior written consent. C, without limiting the foregoing, without artist's prior written consent, which may be withheld for any or no reason. So that was a mouthful. I don't think that anything here is shocking. That being said, I do think that in situations like this one where things have escalated, let's put it that way, like with Diddy, a lot of these NDAs that are completely regular, that have nothing particularly interesting in comparison to other NDAs, suddenly look a lot more suspicious because, hey, it turns out this person has a lot to fucking hide. So I do think that realistically, even though this is standard, anything we read will have a Diddy lens on it, which means that everything we read will likely be read with a level of suspicion. At least from me, there will be a level of suspicion. So I definitely know that none of this to me will ever come off as casual, knowing what he's up to. Does that make sense? Moving on the second page, there are 3 pages of the NDA. On the second page it said, "You shall not at any time defame or disparage artists and or artist parties and or use, disclose, disseminate, or confirm directly or indirectly to anyone any information or material which may harm, disparage, demean, or reflect negatively or poorly upon or cause injury to the reputation, character, or career of artist and or of any artist parties. The foregoing expressly includes, without limitation, communications appearing on the internet via blogging and social networking sites such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Without limiting the foregoing, you shall not, without artist's prior written authorization, in artist's sole discretion, A, distribute, publish, or permit the distribution or publication of photographs, videotapes, films, audio tapes, or any other recorded sound or image, or any other materials of artist and or artist parties." Now, I'm gonna pause here real quick. I do think that as a general notion, a lot of the time NDAs get bad raps, and realistically, I don't actually think there's any real reason for that, in the sense of, obviously there's a reason when it comes to cases like this. But if we look at an average celebrity, I'm pretty sure none of us would think much of it if for random celebrities, say a journalist is coming over. Journalist still has skin in the game, but let's say they're having someone over and they make them sign an NDA to not film the inside of the house, to not take pictures, to not record. I don't think any of that is strange considering the limited privacy they have, and also security issues, right? Because someone filming the layout of a house obviously is a security risk for a celebrity. If that shit gets leaked, the floor plan's out, blah, blah, blah. So that doesn't weird me out at all. It's just everything we know of Diddy until this point, all of this automatically seems nefarious, especially the focus on not sharing photo, video, blah, blah, blah. All of that is damning information. And we're gonna get into also the legality of certain things because I'll get into it. Anyway, the last paragraph that's important on this one, on this second page says, "You acknowledge that due to the nature of entertainment industry, any disclosure or dissemination by you of any information or material described in paragraph 1 will deprive artist and or the artist parties of the right to use such information or material. You expressly agree that if you breach or threaten to breach paragraph 1, artist and or artist parties would suffer immediate irreparable harm and injury which could not be adequately compensated by an award of monetary damage." So here we have the basic acknowledgement that, hey, if you fuck with a PR, basically there's no way to make that up, which in a lot of ways is true. I mean, you can look good in front of the cameras, I don't know, get paparazzi to casually find you going to do some charity work, but all of that doesn't really repair damage. And specifically when it comes to Diddy, there's no damage control with shit like what he's doing. In my opinion, there's nothing you could say or do to really change my mind other than prove that you didn't do any of the shit that you probably did do. Last page, last paragraph that's relevant in my opinion. It says, "You agree to defend, indemnify, and hold artists and artist parties and their respective parents, subsidiaries, affiliates, licensees, assignees, and their officers, directors, members, managers, agents, distributors, and employees harmless from and against and all liabilities, damages, judgment, losses, costs, and expenses, including without limitations, reasonable counsel fees of any kind of or nature upon or relating to any breach of the provisions, representations, or warranties contained herein or by virtue for any accuracy in or breach of the representation and warranties made by you hereunder to any third party on behalf of the artist or artist parties, or any claim, action, or proceeding asserted or instituted relating to growing out of such breach." So the question of liability here is also interesting considering what Diddy has been accused of. And if you don't remember what all he's been accused of, I'll link one of my prior videos down below. However, we need to remember that the Diddy accusations are assault of minors, and there are actually, and as of a week ago, Diddy was accused of sexually assaulting minors in 2 new lawsuits. So Everything that is in this NDA, in my opinion, and in a lot of other people's opinions, I believe, is very oriented towards this. Like, I don't think any of us are out here thinking that Diddy's embarrassed about something he did at a party 20 years ago and that's why he has an NDA. So a lot of it is for privacy and security, I'm sure, because I'm sure that at that level of celebrity, you want that. At the same time, now that he's been accused of all of this, I don't think the public is going to separate what he's being accused of and these NDAs. Does that make sense? So the interesting thing about NDAs, so NDAs are enforceable when they're signed, obviously, if they're properly drafted and executed. So things that could undermine an NDA would be overly broad language, not confidential information, request for something illegal. An NDA agreement that asks the worker to keep mum on an issue they are legally obligated to report would not withstand scrutiny. So this is what a lot of people on Twitter were talking about, where they were saying, you know, the NDA isn't going to be valid if what people need to basically shut the fuck up about is illegal activity or crimes generally. So that's the thing that's going to be interesting here, is to see how thin the line is, right? Because if someone saw something at Diddy's house that implies crime but isn't directly seeing the crime, is that something they can talk about? You know, if they saw one of the 1,000,000 bottles of baby oil and were like, hey, this is fucking weird, I think something's up, can they say something about that? Or do they need to witness the crime actually happening? Because in that case, then I wouldn't even know what would happen to the person who is, I suppose, partaking in the crime as well, who's present, let's put it that way, right? The person who's there seeing the crime. Realistically, do a lot of people want to come out and say, hey, when this crime was occurring, I was there, I didn't necessarily do anything to stop it, but it happened and I was there, you know? So it's also a question of how much people want to risk for themselves. Also considering, like I said prior, I don't know what repercussions you get for being, I don't even know if you count as an accomplice, but for being simply present, right? So I think that's the thing with Diddy and the NDAs as well, is that I don't even think a lot of NDAs have to be super enforced. I think a lot of people are happy to not talk about it, happy to pretend they weren't there, because realistically, what celebrity wants to get looped into this mess? And then what celebrity also wants to answer questions about why exactly they were there in the first place? Does that make sense? So it would be implicating yourself for potentially nothing to gain on your behalf, apart from getting like the truth off your chest or whatever. But aside from that, that puts you in public scrutiny. And immediately, most people realistically are going to say, hey, you were at one of those parties, hey, you're fucked up, you're weird, you obviously were part of it, blah, blah, blah. So it also is a question of how many people actually want to risk that. Because I'm not thinking that many do, so I don't even think this NDA is that big of a problem in the sense of, do I think it's holding back a lot of people from talking? No. Anyway, you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think these NDAs change anything? Do you think they actually affect anything? Or they're just paperwork essentially given to kind of scare people off, right? Let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.